Mira stared at the empty wall in the hallway, a blank space where her favorite painting used to hang. It was a simple piece, just a serene landscape of a misty forest at dawn, something she had bought years ago at a flea market. It wasn't expensive or particularly special to anyone else, but it had always brought her a sense of calm. Except now, it was gone. "Ravi," she called out to her husband, who was in the living room watching TV. "Did you move the painting?" "What painting?" came the distracted reply. "The one in the hallway, the forest," she said, walking into the living room. "It's gone." Ravi looked up, confused. "I didn't touch it. Maybe you moved it and forgot." Mira shook her head. "I haven't touched it in years. Did you let the kids play with it?" Ravi shrugged. "They're at a friend's place. Maybe they did it before they left." Mira sighed, feeling a flicker of irritation. She'd have to check with Rohan and Priya when they got back, but the kids knew better than to mess with things on the walls. She decided to look around the house just in case. She searched every room, even the attic where she never went, but there was no sign of the painting. Frustrated, she returned to the hallway, staring at the empty wall, trying to remember if she had ever moved it. Maybe she had, and it had slipped her mind. Or perhaps the kids really had taken it to play a prank. But then, as she turned to walk away, something caught her eye. A small smudge of color on the wall, where the edge of the painting had been. Mira leaned in closer, squinting at it. It was a faint streak of red, barely noticeable. She rubbed at it with her thumb, but it didn't come off. She frowned, a cold prickle of unease creeping up her spine. It wasn't paint. It looked more like blood. Mira stepped back, her heart pounding faster. "Ravi," she called again, her voice wavering. "Come look at this." Ravi came into the hallway, his brow furrowed as he saw the smear. "What is that?" he asked, leaning in to examine it. "I don't know," Mira whispered. "It looks like blood, but it can't be." Ravi wiped at it with his finger, then glanced at her. "Maybe something leaked from the attic?" "I just checked up there," Mira said, shaking her head. "Nothing's leaking, and there's no sign of the painting." Ravi stood up, looking at the blank wall with a frown. "Well, it has to be somewhere. We'll ask the kids when they get home. I'm sure there's an explanation." But as the hours passed and the kids returned, they insisted they hadn't touched the painting. Mira began to feel increasingly uneasy, her mind racing with possibilities. Had someone broken in and stolen it? But who would steal a painting like that, and why? That night, as she lay in bed, unable to sleep, she heard a soft creaking sound from the hallway. At first, she thought it was just the house settling, but then it came again, a slow, deliberate creak, like someone was walking down the hallway. Mira's breath caught in her throat. She nudged Ravi, who was fast asleep beside her. "Ravi, wake up," she whispered urgently. "Someone's in the house." Ravi groaned, barely stirring. "It's just the wind. Go back to sleep." But Mira knew it wasn't the wind. She slipped out of bed and crept to the door, her heart thudding in her chest. She opened it just a crack and peered into the dark hallway. Nothing. But then she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The painting was back on the wall. She blinked, staring at it in disbelief. The painting hung exactly where it had always been, as if it had never been missing. But something was different about it now. The colors seemed darker, the mist thicker, the trees more twisted and sinister. And there was something else, too, a shadowy figure standing among the trees, barely visible in the gloom. Mira's breath hitched as she stepped closer, squinting at the figure. It was small, hunched over, its features obscured by the shadows, but she could see just enough to recognize that it was a child. A child with long, dark hair, wearing a tattered dress. "Mama," a voice whispered. So faint it was almost lost in the stillness of the night. Mira's blood turned to ice as she realized the voice wasn't coming from the painting. It was behind her. Slowly she turned around. Standing in the middle of the hallway was a little girl, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes wide and unblinking. Her hair hung in matted strands around her face, and her dress was torn and stained with something dark. "Mama," the girl whispered again, taking a step closer. Mira stumbled back, her heart pounding in terror. "Ravi!" she screamed, but her voice seemed to die in the air. The girl kept coming closer, her eyes locked on Mira's, filled with a strange, sorrowful hunger. "Where is my painting?" the girl whispered, her voice a hollow, echoing sound that sent shivers down Mira's spine. "I want it back!" Mira backed into the wall, her mind racing with panic. "I don't know. I don't know where your painting is," she cried, tears streaming down her face. The girl stopped, her head tilting to the side as if she was listening to something only she could hear. Then slowly she raised her hand and pointed at the painting on the wall. "That's not yours," the girl whispered, her voice filled with a chilling certainty. "It's mine." And then she was gone. Mira blinked, the hallway suddenly empty. The air felt cold, and the only sound was her own ragged breathing. She looked at the painting, her hands trembling. The figure in the forest was gone, leaving only the mist and the twisted trees behind. But the unease remained, a cold, gnawing fear that burrowed deep into her soul. She couldn't sleep that night, or the nights that followed. The painting stayed on the wall, but every time she looked at it, she felt like something was watching her, waiting just beyond the mist. And sometimes, late at night, she could still hear the creaking of footsteps in the hallway, followed by a faint, desperate whisper, "Mama."